Hello, everyone. Thanks for checking in to this video to see how we're going to get started with setting up a page in your Vectorworks files. So in the video that you watched before, you learned a little bit about the palettes that we use quite often, the basics, the tool sets, the attributes, the resources, and the object info palette. You learned how to turn those palettes on and off. And you also learned how to turn the grid off if you don't like the grid using tools, smart cursor settings, and show grid or uncheck it to turn it off. So we've already covered those things. Now I'm going to be sharing this terms to know document with you, and I'm going to try and color code it where I'm going to have all of these things that we covered in the first video in green. And what we like to cover today are these topics right here. So I'm going to actually go through these topics. Some of them will only take a couple seconds to do, but we want to get your page set up correctly before you even start drawing on a project. So we'll be going through these different terms. And again, I'll be sharing this with you later. To get started on your page, to get started on your page setup, what we want to do first is make sure that we're working in the correct workspace. Some people will be working in Designer. Some people will be working in Architecture. So all I'd like you to do is just double check by clicking on Tools, Workspaces, and make sure that you have Designer checked. Designer. That's the one that we want to get started working in. The next thing we're going to do is set up our gray page area. Our gray page area, so that it represents a printed sheet of paper in landscape mode. So to do that, I'm just going to go to File, Page Setup. In the page setup, we're going to set the print area by choosing Size Unavailable. And then we're just going to choose ASME A. ASME A. That'll change our gray box so that it's an 8.5 by 11-inch sheet of paper for us to work on for our first couple projects. So now my gray box is in landscape mode. The next thing I'd like you to check is the scale of the drawing you're working at. So up towards the top of your screen, there's an area called the view bar. The view bar. And we'll use the view bar today for two different things. One of them is to set up the scale so that if we draw a 1-inch square, it's going to be printed as 1 inch on the page. So to set it up to a scale of 1 to 1, I'm just going to click on the 1:1 under the metric and engineering scales. It should say down here in paper scale 1:1. That's full scale. That's what we'll work on when we first get started with these projects. Now, if that layer scale icon isn't there, we might need to turn that layer scale icon on. The way that we do that is out here at the end of the view bar. I'll just make sure that I have a check mark next to layer scale. See, it disappeared now because I turned it off. But I'm going to go back, turn layer scale back on, and now I can make sure that I have my scale set to 1:1. Mine had defaulted to the 1:48. That's a common scale that we use in architecture. Also in the view bar, you'll see an icon that's the look at working plane icon. We want to make sure that we have that set to screen plane as we get started with our CAD drawings. If you don't do that, it's going to treat all of your objects, whether they're 2D or 3D, like they're 3D objects, and that can confuse things. So we want to just make sure that we're set to screen plane. Now, I said there was another feature in the view bar we were going to be using, and that's this current view tool, current view. What I can do is I can look down on the top of an object. Here they use a house as an example. So if I'm in the top view, I'm just looking down at the roof. If I'm in the front view, I might be looking towards the front of the house and see the front door. The right view would be just the right side of an object. You'll become more familiar with this as we work on your projects. But for right now, I'd like you to just select front view so that we're all working in the front view. We can change that later. We can change that later. Now, one thing that I had already mentioned in the other video, but I just wanted to review again, was that as we start to work, we have a couple of different rendering options. There's a lot of stuff in these pull down menus that we'll be going through. But for right now, I just want you to go to rendering. And the ones that we use most often are wireframe, OpenGL, Fast RenderWorks, and Final Quality RenderWorks. And there's advantages and disadvantages to each of them. But for right now, I'd like you to just work a lot in OpenGL. OpenGL will be the best format for us to use to get started. So now I'm in the front view. I'm in my screen plane. I have a scale set up at 1:1, and I'm ready to draw a couple objects. So that's what we're going to do. I'm going to just draw a 3-inch circle. 3-inch circle. So I just drew a circle anywhere on the page. Again, it doesn't matter where I draw it, what size I make it. I could make it this big, or I could make it this small. Because what I'm going to be doing is setting up the diameter right here. I want the outside diameter from one edge through the center to another edge. I want that to be set up at 3 inches. Now, all I'm going to do is center that on the page by locating the center X at 0, the center Y at 0. I'm just going to make it a yellow color. So now I've got a circle, a 3-inch diameter circle. But as you know about CAD, one of the best things about CAD is we can work with 3D objects. So all I'm going to do is use a tool called Model Extrude. And that just gives this object the third dimension. It either pulls it towards us or pushes it away from us. If I just typed in 3 inches here, it would extrude the object 3 inches away from me. So I just hit 3 and OK or enter. And now what that's done is it's turned that object into a 3D object. Again, when you first do that, if you don't have the rendering option set to OpenGL, it'll show up just as a wireframe drawing, just like that. But that's why I said if we work in OpenGL to get started, it might be a little better for you. So there's an extruded 3-inch circle. Again, I could go to my different views. What does that look like from the front? What would that look like from the top? What would it look like from the right side? Or the views that are most practical for a lot of people are views called isometric drawings that show the top, the front, and the side at the same time. So there's an isometric drawing of it. Now, the last thing that I want you to do is save this drawing. Save this drawing. So in your U drive, or if you're working at home, you could save it onto a flash drive or the local computer. But when you save this, what we'll do is go to File, Save As, and in class, I would like you to set up a folder just called CAD or Vectorworks and put all of your files into that folder when you save that file. So we're going to save these so that when we come in tomorrow, we can simply go to File, Open Recent, and it'll show up whatever we might want to work on will show up in that window. Or we can go to File, Open, find our CAD Vectorworks file, and we can open whatever file we'd like to open. So that's setting up the first page and getting started with Vectorworks. I hope that helps. Let me know if you have any questions.